So welcome to 1280's new studio in Coburg. We're still working on the project. There's a lot to be done. We've done most of the electrical work. We've hooked up the kilns, we've got the lightings done, we've got power points for all the wheels in each station. So for example, here we're at the hand building studio. These workbench, there'll be 2 of these, quite big for people who are doing mostly hand building as well as hand building classes. So when we do the classes, we're not taking away the wheel space, then the members can use it, but that's for a whole different topic. So the next big thing is plumbing. We got the toilets replaced, we've got the sinks replaced because the old one was just disgusting. We also need to paint the bathroom and stuff like that, but one of the main plumbing jobs that I could DIY is our clay trap. So we've got our sink installed. It's a freestanding sink, similar to what you see at a commercial kitchen. So we also got taps installed that are flexible, so you can take it off, rinse your stuff and put it back on. It makes it a lot easier to clean up and just to fill up water buckets and things like that. But we didn't get the drainage done because we're going to build our own system. And this is where this video comes in. I figured this is a topic that a lot of people are interested in. I haven't seen any how-to videos or instructions on doing something in a more commercial scale. We are going to have a lot of people in this studio running a lot of classes, so our demand for a clay trap is going to be way higher. We're going to need something that takes a lot more water and be able to filter out a lot more clay. We also need to be able to clean it quite easily, so each filter should be separate, then we can take it out, clean it, put it back in, and it's all good to go. Usually that might be done in between terms, or maybe every 2 months or so, depending on how much clay goes into the system. So this is not just going to be a clay trap, this is also going to be a water recycling system. With the amount of water that we'll be using, we've got probably going to be roughly about 30 something wheels, hand building, we've got classes. All that uses a lot of water washing up and cleaning the wheels and cleaning the benches and stuff like that. So it's very important for us to be able to reuse a lot of that water, and if our filter works properly, in the last stage of the filter, the water should be almost clean enough that you can use as you're throwing water and you're cleaning water, because it's just, you're adding clay, water to clay, it's fine. And most of the clay particle will actually be filtered, so you should get water that is fairly clear. So this is something that we've learned from the wheelhouse down in South Melbourne. Gary, who runs it, gave us a little tour of his system. It's going to be very similar to what we're building here today. Basically, this is what we've done so far. It's a double sink bench top, so we've got 2 sinks here with the drainage coming down. This is just a little kit that I bought from Bunnings or any hardware store. It was like $10, it's super cheap. The only issue was this was too short to extend far enough to reach the second sink. You can buy a version with extended arm here, which will reach a lot further. I didn't measure my sink before figuring this out, so basically, luckily the PVC pipe that they provided just goes right into a 50mm PVC pipe like this. So I was able to use this as a sleeve. And you can see the kind of pink and red here, that's just the PVC cement. You've got a primer which you'll brush on, and then you'll put on the actual cement and then join it, and it just almost immediately it becomes hardened, and it's super strong. It creates a watertight seal. I've tested this already, there's no leak, which is good. This is my first plumbing project, so I'm pretty happy about that. And then you've got your typical, I guess, a P-trap here. This is a flexible one which you can move it around, so you can have it straight down or you can have it outright. For us, we're going to have it this way because you're going to have the sink here, and then our clay trap over here. So to get from this into our bin, we're going to use something called a uniseal. So these are really handy. I've seen this being used on YouTube for water tanks and just little aquarium and pool maintenance and things like that. So they were very handy because what I used to do is I'll drill a hole into the container and then put the pipe through, and then I'll silicone around it. So it does work. I've used it for probably over a year and nothing's gone wrong. There was no leak, but it's not very flexible. I won't be able to disconnect them. I won't be able to move it around. And if it fails, it's going to be annoying, and I have to go back and re-silicone it, especially on the inside. It's going to be wet, then we have to remove the water, dry the thing, so it's going to be a whole thing. So we would need something that's a bit more robust for, I guess this is more of commercial use. So this is where these comes in. So you basically drill a hole of the size of the seal. So for example, this is a 50mm connection, so you can fit in pipes that are 50mm. So as you push it in, it expands the plastic, and then that creates a seal. So to drill the hole's going to be a 76, I believe. So it's going to be a 76mm hole. You'll then plonk the uniseal into it, and then you'll put some soapy water on the seal and on the pipe, use it as lubrication, and then just twist it and push it through, and then you want the pipe to extend further out into the barrel or into your container. So super handy, and then technically it's reusable, so you can just pull it out and push it back in, and that works as well. Also, I was worried the P-trap might be an issue. This is where most of the clay is going to top up, because then for the clay to go up and around, it's actually not going to happen. So this is going to be a trap. And I think this might be an issue because this is going to get clogged soon, and none of the clay will actually go into the clay trap. So potentially we have to rethink this system again. I wonder if there's a T section of this. So you know how the second bowl comes into this end? Maybe we can have another one that goes out the other side. That way the water just goes straight into the trap. There's no P-trap here to collect all the clay. But the good thing is, if this is the case, this is easily removed. Maybe we do this once a month or once a week and just open it, empty it. And that means there's less clay going into the trap. That means the water will be cleaner, and potentially it means we clean the big one way less. So maybe we just clean the small one more often. There's also a system where there's a bottle that goes under here, and you can just collect all your clay, unscrew it, empty it. So that's not a bad thing. And then just use this as a water filter more than collecting a lot of the clay. Yeah, I think that's one thing that we'll have to just use and find out. I can easily come back and change things and modify things. For now, we'll just do it this way and see how that goes. So I've marked out the first position, so we can do that on camera. The rest of the stuff I'll kind of build off camera because it's going to be a lot of figuring things out. But then once that's done, we'll go through the whole stage and we can show the finished process as well. We are waiting on constructions to be done at where the sink is. So there's going to be a mezzanine that goes above it, and there's going to be two column that comes down to support the mezzanine. So we don't know, we know kind of where it's going to be, but I didn't want to build the whole system, cut all the pipes this size, and then suddenly it doesn't fit. So for now, we're just going to do the one trap at the front and then just not have any drain for now. So because the studio is not going to be operational right away, there's still probably a month worth of work to do. We don't need this clay trap to be completely done. So I can just do what I can for now, and then the rest we can do once the constructions are done. Then I can put the bins exactly where I need them and then measure and drill and do all that stuff. So for now, we'll just do the first one because it definitely sits right next to the sink. The good thing about these bins, so these are our rubbish collection bin in Australia. So we just put them out the street every week and it gets collected. It does have a lid, which is great because then you can keep a lot of the smell. So clay traps tends to smell a bit because of all of the organic matter. It does get moldy. You can put vinegars and anything that kills bacteria into it, and that will help clean it out. But the lid definitely helps keep a lot of that smell in, and then we can also use this as a little bench top. So whether I put a little piece of timber or material on top so it's a bit flatter, or it can just be for when you're cleaning up, you can just put things on it. It's just an extra surface space. So I've gave this a pressure wash. I've cleaned it all out. So the story behind these bins are that within our council area, they have recently updated the bin system. So the recycle bin has been split into two. That's going to be one just for recycle, like bottles, papers, and plastic. And then another bin is going to be, I think, glass and something else. So basically, it's just going to make the recycle system a little bit easier. They're going to basically sort a lot of the stuff earlier on instead of down the stream. So the council have given the new bins for the whole council area. And the old bins, which are these ones, were going to be collected to be decommissioned. So I don't know what they're going to do to it, whether they recycle it or they have other use for it. But I figure if they're going to take it, and it's a whole council work, so we're talking about thousands of bins that's being taken away. So having 3 that's gone missing, I don't think it's a big issue. Hopefully this is not evidence and we somehow get into trouble. But yeah, luckily this whole system was going on, so I just picked 3 that was the cleanest that I've seen on the street. This was during our move to the studio as well, so we've got the truck, and I just pulled up the truck, put the 3 bins in the back and drove away. So that's how we kind of found these bins. But yeah, lucky for us, and it gets reused for a good purpose. It's being reused to reuse water. So anyway, so let's do the first hole. So I've already marked it out. What's the best way to do this? I've also marked out where the hole's going to be. It's a bit further to the back because the P-trap goes back into the wall and then out, which is probably not a bad thing because it's a bit neater. You won't see the pipe as much. For the bins after this, so bin number 2 and 3, we might actually have it closer to the center, depending on where it's going to be in that location. This is also why I'm waiting until the mezzanine is done, because the columns might mean the pipe won't be able to go a certain way. It might have to go behind or in front, most likely in front. So instead of the hole being further back, it might have to be further forward. So each bin's going to have to be measured separately. If you have a spot where it's completely open and it doesn't matter, then it's easy. So this surface is a little bit curved, but with the uniseal, that's another good thing about it is that it works on curved surfaces as well. It doesn't have to be a perfect flat surface, where if you're doing an adapter with a flange and then there's a 2 bits that screw together, if there's a curve like this, it might not work, or you have to pack a lot of silicone into it. And again, that becomes a very permanent situation. So we'll see how this works. All right, so we've got our hole drilled here, and then let's just see. We've got the uniseal. I'm pretty sure the smaller part goes in first. So because it is plastic, you can just mold it a little bit. That looks great. That looks like it's, meant to be there. And then here's a pipe that I've already cut to size. I've sanded around the corners to make it nice and smooth, so it should go in without damaging any part of this. What I need now is just some soapy water. So we kind of ran out of soap, so I had to just add a lot of water to dilute it. So this is actually quite perfect. Squirt it onto the end of the pipe where it's going into the uniseal. But it's still got a bit of soap, which is good. It smells like lavender. So I think it's just going to be push and, okay. That was easy. Seeing how easy it is, I try not to rotate the uniseal too much, because what I should have done is I should have sanded the hole that I just cut. That way, if this twists, it's not going to get ripped. I think now it might be a little bit too late. So as I'm twisting the pipe, I'm just going to hold the uniseal and make sure it doesn't turn as much as possible. Yeah, so I can easily take this in and out and readjust. And because of the flexibility of the seal, I can also move this around a little bit. I don't think I'll pull too much, because then you might open up some gaps, but at least it's flexible enough where I don't have to be super precise with my placement, and it should still connect to the trap. Well, technically it'll go this way because that's the bottom. I'll be able to connect this quite easily. Yeah, so that worked out really well. Super easy to do. Yeah, so these uniseals, I think if you're doing anything similar to this with water and things like that, you can get this quite small. So if you're building a system that's similar but in a smaller scale, you might use storage container, for example, and just get a few that are roughly that size. You don't have to have them side by side either. They can kind of be on top of each other if the containers are strong enough to take the weight. It's great to have a sink and fresh water all plumbed and ready to go, and you can just rinse things constantly. It makes cleaning up a lot easier, but you're also wasting a lot of water. Cleaning clay is quite easy, especially off plastic, like splash pans and tools and stuff like that. Using a sponge and then scrubbing it and then just remove the clay. The clay doesn't stick to things unless it's really dry, and even then, once you apply a bit of moisture, it just comes right off. So there's no reason why you should blast it with water constantly. So I think right now our kind of work in progress system is going to be use bucket as much as you can. I prefer people not to wash up at the sink unless for whatever reason you really have to. You should have a bucket, fill up your bucket, take it to your station, clean up your wheel, wipe off all your tools, and then make sure there's no lumpy clay on it. If there's a bit of clay water that's still attached to it, that's fine. And then with that bucket, take all your stuff to the sink, empty the bucket so all the clay gets filtered. Any clay that is visible so you can actually carry, recycle it as much as you can, and only pour out water that has got particles in it which you can't remove easily. So if there's a lump, just take it out, put it in the recycling bucket. We're probably going to set up a couple of recycling centers right next to the sink, so if you've got any clay that's ready to go, you can just scoop it straight in. And then you can empty the bucket, you can use a bit of fresh water, clean the bucket, and for all your tools that might have a little bit of clay water on it, then you just give it a quick rinse, maybe like 5-10 seconds, and then put it away, it'll dry, there won't be any clay dust on it. And you don't go through this whole process of using gallons. Why am I saying gallons? You won't go through this process of using liters and liters and liters of water. Even if we're recycling it, it doesn't mean you should be wasteful with it. So once the recycling system is working and there's clean waters at the end, you can then, instead of bringing your bucket to the sink, you just bring your bucket to here, scoop out some water, and then take it to your workstation and clean, and then the rest will be the same. So we can reuse a lot of that water. I'm sure there are going to be people who will be just sitting in the sink and rinsing things constantly. It's unavoidable, especially when we have a larger and larger community where we can't control what everyone does. But the induction process is very important to make sure there's education and training involved, and also explaining why we do things a certain way. It's not just because we're trying to save money, even though it will also help. But a lot of water that we're using, it's unnecessary to just flush it down the drain so quickly. We can reuse it as much as we can, help the environment a bit, help our water bill a little bit. Yeah, so I think that's the theory side of thing, and then let's just go have a look at the finished product if I actually manage to finish it within a reasonable time frame. If not, I might upload this first and then do the rest later. As you can see, I have raised the sink on blocks. That's because I want to get this water level as high as possible. Basically, my drain can only be as high as where this is. If it's any higher, you're going to have water just sitting on the bottom of the sink, which is then not great. So making sure that's below that. And this is also why initially this extension does not exist on this system. So added this extension of this much space gives me this much in every single filter. So what I'm gaining is actually this height, which I guess would be 5 centimeters, but you have to remember it's 5 centimeters on the bin this big. So that's actually quite a fair amount of volume of water to be able to store in here. And times that by 3, suddenly we're going to gain a lot. So these blocks are very handy, as well as this, just to make sure the drain can be as high as possible. So now I'm just going to install all this. So it should just fit right. It should just fit quite easily, making sure all the silicone rings are still sitting properly. These doesn't require any special tool, which is great. You can just do it by hand, basically. So just making sure that's nice and secure. So now this is all done. And then just getting the bin in position, making sure that pipe's connected. So again, because there's a bit of flex, it's way easier. We can move things around. And then again, we're just going to tighten this. And then you've got the pipe going into the uniseal. So this is going to be where our bin's going to go. It's right up against the wall, which is good. I can bring it closer to the sink. I think if I just push it, because this is flexible, it just goes right into the uniseal, which is great. And then on the inside, yep, that looks good. I can bring that out just a bit so that when I open and close this, it's a little bit easier. So we've got both sinks here. So these are the flexible mixers that I was talking about. So if you've got something you're washing, you can just grab that, move it around, give it a quick rinse. You don't have to then move the tool to it. I think if people are going to be washing stuff in the sink, just make sure that the drain is plugged so that when you're washing, you just rinse off all the stuff that you need. And then once you're ready to go, you can just open it up and let the water out. That way you've got water on the bottom of the sink that you can then reuse. Instead of having this constantly running, you can just have a bit of water here, rinse, 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 and it's a bit easier than using it as a bucket. I think that's a good way to go as well. It will mean that if it's busy, it might not be workable, but I think if most people use buckets and then sometimes people use this, I think that's still okay. It's going to be something that we'll have to work kind of over time to see what works and what doesn't. It's going to be a constantly kind of evolving situation. So let's say I'm washing up. Actually, the sink needs a washer. This is good because there's a lot of just dust. Okay, this water is now spilling into the bin, which is exactly what we wanted. So like I mentioned earlier, we don't know exactly where the bin is going to go because of the mezzanine structure. I think the column comes out about 1.47, so roughly here. So even this might be an issue. I think potentially the column is going to go, say, somewhere like that. and then that's going to support the structure up top. But this sink is movable, so we can slide everything across slightly if I need that clearance. And depending on how big the pole is, I think it's going to be, the base is going to be 100 mil, or the column itself is 100 mil, I'm not sure. So potentially the second sink, the second bin can just be here, and then the third one will be around the column or maybe under the stairs. So the staircase of our mezzanine goes up here, kind of roughly here is going to be the staircase, so this is going to be under the staircase, and then our third bin can then go across that side, and we've got drainage in that corner as well. So this is where the overflow is going to go to. But I'm just glad to have this set up now, so I can actually wash my hands and do, you know, any clay stuff can just go in here. The sludge, potentially we could recycle it into our recycle clay. It just depends how clean this is, and if we put signage up and make sure it's like strictly clay only, no food, no plaster, nothing. If this is just clay and no glazes as well, then we can use the clay in this water, recycle it, put it in the puck mill, and then bring it back. Potentially we can wash our glaze material here as well, but that's only if we don't recycle this. If we're not recycling any of this clay, then we can also clean up glazes here. If not, we might do a separate system. What I have got on order was actually 2 clay traps that are commercially made. They just sit under the sink, and you connect one pipe into inlet and then the outlet into your drain, and then that's it. It's quite small. It's probably about this big compared to what we've got. So because of the bin situation and the recycling water, we decided to not use those. Potentially we can use those in the glaze room, and then that can be a dedicated glaze sink. And then we might sell another one. We bought 2, so it's kind of silly. But I'm sure someone in Melbourne will have a use for it, and then we can just sell it off, or, you know, make it a giveaway, maybe even. So I've actually changed my mind. I'm going to finish the rest of the system today, just because I do know exactly where the column's going to go. I just need to measure it out properly. And with the uniseal, it's quite flexible. So if that's the case, I can always just tweak things here and there. I just need to make sure there's enough pipe that goes into the bin. That way, if I need to extend it, it will be fine. If not, I can just cut a new length of pipe. So with that said, I've got a laser level here, which will match the first pipe going through. We're actually going to do the rest all exactly the same. As long as the entire system is lower than the sink itself, which sits around here, then that's fine, because even if the water goes up, it's just going to fill in the rest of the tank. It's as long as this pipe is low, it's not higher than this. If it's higher than this, then the water will back into the sink, but if it's lower, it'll be fine. With that in mind, I can actually go even higher. I've already drilled one hole and now I really regret it. I can go and borrow, find another bin, and then redo it, because I don't want to have to seal this back up. It's just going to be messy. So I've raised the laser level. This is as high as we will go, which means my pipe needs to be just, the bottom of the pipe needs to be below that, because the water will flow through. So I can actually drill this quite high. This is already drilled kind of roughly here, but I think it's okay, because the rest of the system will still get that height. We can still make the water go up, and it's not like the clay is ever going to be this high. By the time it goes to here, we should be cleaning it out anyway. So that's fine. So if we do the rest at this height, I think we're okay. All right, now we're just gonna smooth out that cut. Bring this bin out, and then push it through. Hopefully it's not a big issue. Also, I've cut this a little bit shorter, so let's see if this is going to be a problem. So you can see how much it's slanted just from looking at the laser. Yeah, before I go too far, let's just test it out, fill this up, and then, yeah. Okay, so after quite a bit of time, we finally filled the tank enough where it sits just above the uniseal. It's slowly being filtered to the second stage, but there's no outlet here at this point. I still need to tweak a few things. For example, because of the angle of this pipe, even though I measured the height to be correct here, the pipe actually keeps going up a little bit. So right now the water sits just under here. So if you take out the strain, you can actually see a bit of a puddle, which is not great. But I think if I just pull the pipe out this way a little bit, it will then lower that point just enough where the puddle's no longer visible. But other than that, right now looking at the seal, there's no, it's bone dry, there's nothing on both sides. So the seal's working fine. You can see the bin is bulging out a little bit because there's about probably close to 200 liters of water here, which means this whole thing weighs about 200 kilos right now, which I haven't really thought about because now it's going to be really hard to move, but not impossible. So when we move it, we'll definitely have to drain a lot of the water out and just lower the weight, and also so when we're moving, it's not going to splash around. So this works perfectly fine now. I'm just going to continue and finish the third tank. Potentially we do have a fourth bin that's a bit smaller. If we do the fourth bin, that means the fourth bin is really, really, really clean. One thing I haven't thought about and only seen the water flow, it might be an issue, is the pipes are basically facing each other right now. So if you've got the water coming in from one end, it's basically almost shooting straight into the outlet, and then it's not giving it enough time to circulate and settle. So what I might do is add a little baffle, because just a solid piece of plastic in the middle. That way I can stop the air from flowing into the outlet, and then it will hit that wall, disperse, and then mix with the rest of the water before it fills up, and then the water goes out to the outlet. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If I was doing this again and there's room for it, I would probably do it as one pipe in from the front and one pipe in from the back. That way the water doesn't directly shoot into each other, but right now, because the way I want it to align, it does, but that's fine. I can just add a little something, just hang it there, maybe super glue it to the side, and it'll block the airflow. It will block the water flowing through. So this is working great. We can close that up now and finish the rest. So that took no time at all. Like, drill the hole, take a couple of minutes at most, measuring and doing all that. Cutting the PVC pipes, again, nothing too hard. You can just use a hacksaw. I've got a bandsaw that's quickly cuts it through. So I've got this long one that connects through here because of this column. There's also going to be another column that comes out here for the mezzanine. There's two, one over there, one over here, and then this will be under the staircase. So this will be our cleanest water. I could potentially add a fourth one here. I think once the column goes in, I can move this across, and then we can then run the proper drain out from there through the back, and then we've got a shower and a toilet in there, so we can pinch one of the drain and connect it through there, which I might actually just get the plumber to do in the future. But for now, we'll run a longer pipe. I actually ran out. I got a 3-meter PVC pipe thinking that this would be enough, but obviously it's not. So I may get another one that we can run the temporary drain out. And then once the mezzanine comes in, I can then get a plumber back, and then we can run the proper drain. And of course the mezzanine is going to have a kitchenette, so we're going to have to do a lot of that drainage anyway. So maybe it can just come down across, and then it can all join up together at the end. But for now, this is definitely working. The uniseal's holding still. There's no water coming out that I could really see. Nope. Yep, that's all dry. So that's all working as intended. I've readjusted the pipe a bit, and there's no longer a puddle in the bottom of the sink, which is good, or just like in the bottom of the drain. So that's working fine. So yeah, so I know I said I wasn't going to do this, and it did. And it only took me like an extra hour. So all in all, this was super easy. I think if you have a community studio, or if you're someone who runs a fair amount of classes, I think it's definitely worth investing in something like this. I think all bin material, let's just ignore the sink because you might have a sink already, but just the piping and things like that. Containers going to be the hard part. You might not have access to these bins. You can also buy water barrels. I've bought big blue water barrels that might be a little bit shorter than this, that I think they'll work perfectly as well, and the uniseals should work on them pretty well. Even though they're a little bit more curved than this surface, it should still be okay. If not, just have to find a container that works with this. And then having 3 as your bare minimum. 4 will be even cleaner, but I'm going to try 3 for now. If that's an issue, I can always add a 4th at the end. So yeah, I've tried to close this video for like 4 times already because I keep changing my mind, but now I think this is done. I think this will be very beneficial, and also again, the savings of water, recycling it, reusing it, potentially reusing the clay, all that is very important to minimize our waste in the studio like this where there's a lot of things happening. The last thing we want is just to create more and more waste without any consideration like this. So again, leave a comment if you've got any questions. Do you have a clay trap at home? Do you have a studio that could use something like this? I think out of this whole exercise, the uniseal, again, we're not sponsored, but I'm amazed how easy that was. There's no silicone, there's no trying to line things up. Literally drill a hole, put it in, push the pipe, and you're done. So if if you're only taking away one thing from this video, it's uniseal. Yeah, good luck with your own studio, and I'll hopefully see you guys back with another video on other studio related things. There's so much that we're doing. There's going to be so much I want to talk about. So see you soon.